Now, there are close finishes in pro bike racing. There are nail-biting finishes in pro bike racing. And then there's the Amstel Gold Race. Every year, the Dutch Classic provides a tense finale. And the 2022 edition, well, with Michal Kwiatkowski and Benoit Cosnefroy hurtling towards the finish line, it was no different.
Het is nog geen surplus. Cosnefroy van heel ver gaat hij de sprint aan, de Fransman. Cosnefroy nog altijd aan de leiding. Kwiatkowski komt een beetje in de buurt, maar de Fransman houdt marge. En de Fransman lijkt stand te houden. Komt de Pool, het is Cosnefroy voor Kwiatkowski. En we weten nu al dat Benoot derde gaat worden.
Hello everyone, welcome to the latest Aérogramme podcast for Peloton magazine, featuring a smorgasbord, or indeed a smorgasborg, if I can put my own name in there, of stories. We will drink down the Amstel Gold Race, graze over a frenzied week of stage racing, and whet our appetites for the queen of the classics, the princess of the pavé, next week's Paris-Roubaix. With me to chat through it all is Jeremy Whittle, cycling correspondent to The Guardian and a renowned gutter specialist. Hello, Jeremy.
Hello there.
And also Peter Cossins, the multi-award-winning author who, unlike Jeremy, only takes to the gutter for purely recreational purposes. So we are deep into the spring classics now, with Milan-San Remo, Ghent-Wevelgem and the Tour of Flanders all in our rear-view mirror. Today we've had some predicted winners, Mathieu van der Poel in Flanders, for example, but also some fabulously unexpected winners, such as Binion Gourmet at Ghent-Wevelgem. More of the Eritrean later, but for now let's focus on the Amstel Gold Race. And first of all, the men's race, which was maybe even more exciting after the finish line, again for the second year on the trot, than it was before, as uncertainty reigned over who had won, because I, like most people, Jeremy, saw a two-up sprint between Kwiatkowski and Cosnefroy and thought Cosnefroy had taken it on the line.
Well, it was another of those sprints where you kind of, the eye is really deceptive. So you see, you watch the guys with the most momentum, and the most momentum in that sprint until the very last second was Cosnefroy, and then Michal Kwiatkowski threw one of the best bike lunges I've seen for a long time, threw the bike ahead of himself and just inched it. But everybody beyond the finish line thought, really, I think all the TV commentators thought that Cosnefroy had won. It was really sadly for him. I think he got told by race radio, or what's being attributed to race radio. Anyway, he got told in his earpiece that he'd won. So he started celebrating. Kwiatkowski looked completely downcast, on the verge of tears. Then there was a kind of hiatus of a minute with Tom Pidcock not sure whether to hug Kwiatkowski or to hang on or to commiserate. And the next thing we knew was that Cosnefroy was saying, "Oh,
Le merde!"
And then it became clear that he'd actually got second and Kwiatkowski had won. So it was kind of unsatisfying, but also really gripping.
Well, he took it better than I would have taken it, Peter.
Yeah, I was surprised actually. He really went into his celebration in a big way. He was shouting, "Yes, yes!" I mean, I'm not translating. He was shouting "yes" in English. He was really delighted to win, throwing his arms in the air. And at that point, we hadn't seen any footage, any pictures of the finish at all. We hadn't seen a replay apart from head-on. So we didn't really have any clue. And it was interesting watching at the time that Kwiatkowski didn't react as he crossed the line. He put his whole effort into throwing the bike. And as they went across the line, Cosnefroy did something. He kind of either he punched the bars with frustration, or he thought he'd won. You couldn't really see what it was. And I just got the impression that maybe he thought that he had lost, and then was surprised when he'd been told he'd won. I don't know. I mean, I'm just guessing, but
yeah. There was a great tweet from Oliver Narsson, who 40 seconds apart these tweets are. They were, "Yeah!" and "No!" were the two tweets that he sent out at the same time. I mean, who told him, Jerry? Who told Cosnefroy that he'd won? Because that is there's one thing losing. There's another thing losing after you thought you've won.
Well, race radio, which is who it's been attributed to, would be the radio feed of the race itself. So
for people who are listening now who don't know what race radio is, what is race radio?
Race radio is a shortwave radio connecting all the vehicles on the race, or everyone in the caravan in the race, to what's happening. So it's a central hub of radio communications, where they're talking to the commissaires and the referees and so on and so on and so forth, and they issue information about, there's been a crash, there's been a puncture. They tell teams when a rider at the back of the bunch has got his arm up because he needs a bike change, etc. And they announce, who's won the primes on the mountains or who's won an intermediate sprint, and obviously the most important thing of all, who's won the race. So on social media, it's being attributed to race radio. But I mean, I think that could be a loose. I'm sure the team would have said to him, would have been, we've all seen those in-car clips of the sports directors going crazy. Yes, yes. And everybody freaking out because they think, well, they won a race and hugging and in tears and stuff like that. So maybe all that was going on in his earpiece as well. I mean, who knows? But anyway, he clearly thought he'd won. Greg Van Avermaet, who hasn't had much success recently, was almost as happy as he was. So I mean, it was just one of those. It was. I mean, before we started recording, we were having a chat, weren't we, about what did it compare to? And I suppose football obviously has VAR now, where people think they score a goal and they go running off behind the goal and celebrate with the fans, and they get called back. And then I was thinking it was kind of a bit like, the Oscars when La La Land won Best Movie, but it didn't, and it was Moonlight instead.
I mean, it always comes down to human error, doesn't it? And it did seem upsetting. I mean, Kwiatkowski was just he was downbeat about it, I thought, in the post-race interview. In fact, let's hear him speaking after the race to Sporza TV.
Michal Kwiatkowski, congratulations, you win again here, 7 years later. How does that make you feel?
I don't really think that far behind, because for me, just the last couple of weeks and months was very difficult, and just being here as a winner of the race, that's just incredible feeling, because I was dealing with, sickness, having COVID, flu, and then just, not racing enough, and being here as a winner, this is incredible feeling, and racing with those boys, with Tom Pidcock and everybody who was today riding in our team was just part of, a great performance that we show, because we were taking control from the start, and the execution of the plan was just perfect, and I'm so happy to finish for the team like that.
Kwiatkowski there, the winner of the Amstel Gold Race. I mean, he wasn't plan A for Ineos, was he? First win for him since 2020.
No, because Tom Pidcock was, I think, the designated leader. Although I think, Kwiatkowski's won Amstel before, so maybe there was an element of thinking that he was well suited. And I think they're definitely on a high. I mean, we're going to have a chat about that in a minute, but they are definitely on a high at the moment, that team. And the kind of misfiring that they started the season with seems to be a thing in the past already. And they were both clearly in great shape. And Pidcock, in fact, at one point threatened to chase down Kwiatkowski when he first escaped with Cosnefroid, and there was an awkward moment where he kind of accelerated out of a corner and obviously had fantastic legs himself and sprinted after them, and then thought, oh no, I'm supposed to sit back here and kind of be a foil to these other riders that are chasing. So they both were clearly in really, really great shape, and I guess if either had been in the break, either of them might have won.
Yeah, I mean, it was. He's an interesting rider, Kwiatkowski. I've always had a lot of time for him. I think he's one of those riders. I mean, he came through at the same time as Peter Sagan. They were contemporaries as under 23s, and they kind of shared up the wins between them. I mean, Sagan often found it difficult to beat Kwiatkowski, and when they turned pro, Kwiatkowski did win a lot of races. He was at Quick-Step then. And then he came to Sky, and he sort of developed this reputation as the super-domestique for their tour team, riding in the mountains. And it's kind of taken the edge, or it seems to have taken the edge off his potential in the classics, which I think is enormous. I think if he put his mind to it, he could win any of the classics. I mean, we saw him win Milan-San Remo in a really closely contested sprint where his bike throw made the difference at the end. And we've seen that again today. And he's just had a couple of years where, I don't know, maybe he was affected by COVID. I don't know. His form just hasn't been like it has been before. And it was interesting, the break at the end. You kind of had this guy who was kind of coming back from not having won for a long time. Then you had this new guy coming through, Cosnefroid, who's one of the up and coming French guys. And the French are really on a high at the moment. We saw at Flanders last week, Valentin Madouas was third, second for Cosnefroid in a race that I think Bernardino is the only Frenchman that's ever won Amstel Gold Race. So it would have been the first Frenchman to win since 1981. And they're really on a high. And it made the finish even better that you had these two completely unexpected riders in at the death.
Spring riding, it is back, and Hammerhead's Karoo 2 is the only bike computer with predictive path technology to help you get more out of your rides. And I know this because I have one, and it's wonderful. Explore with confidence with the most advanced GPS navigation and routing available, and its exclusive climber feature to see upcoming gradient changes in real time. And if it's a big change, you can weep onto its waterproof skin. Get your Karoo 2 today at hammerhead.io. Use promo code Aérogramme, that's Aero, A-E-R-O, Gram with 2 M's and an E, to get a free custom colour kit and exclusive premium water bottle when you purchase a Karoo 2. That's hammerhead.io, promo code Aérogramme. Or if I was going to say it as it's written, Aérogramme. It was exciting to watch, and it was millimetres in the end. Do you know what Cosnefroy's nickname is? I only know this because I was just looking up his wins on Wikipedia. Do you know what it is?
No idea.
Go on then.
The Cherbourg Cheetah.
That's unfortunate.
I take it that's like a leopard-like cheetah rather than the...
Well, yes, it's cheetah as in the animal. Let's just put that out. I mean, I think maybe having any sort of word, which is cheetah or otherwise, in your nickname in cycling is probably not the way to go.
No, I was just going to say I think that's rather unfortunate. But I guess the French version of it isn't Tricheur. It wouldn't be that. I guess it would be cheetah as in Cheetah rather than the other spelling. But he's. I mean, I think it's a real shame for them as a team because they are a team that's always up in the classics and they always look like they're going to do something in the classics and then very rarely do. And it would have been a great win, and I'm all in favour of French riders winning because it's so rare. But it's a shame in some ways. But I think it demonstrates, as Pete says, that there is still a resurgence ongoing in French cycling.
Which is what we want. It's absolutely what we want because I just think that it's the heartland in a lot of ways of cycling. It always feels romantic when a French rider wins. What is it about the Amstel Gold Race, Pete? I mean, you've written about this for years. What is it about that throws up these shock finishes? Because last year, is there still an argument ongoing? Because there was the throw at the line, which was between Van Aert and Tom Pidcock. I mean, you can see why Tom Pidcock was keen to do well this year. He said he had sleepless nights after last year. And obviously, it looked like a dead heat. They gave it to Van Aert. And then there was talk afterwards of the laser being focused, and I've got it here, 26.86 centimetres in front of the line.
Oh, really? I know that there was talk about the line actually being drawn kind of slightly diagonally across the road, not straight across the road, and it was actually the laser that's the key issue or the key point. So it's what we see on the road, the kind of the finish line. It's not really the finish line. We don't actually see what the finish is, where the photo finish is taken. But it was frustrating, hugely frustrating for Pidcock, obviously. I mean, it's interesting, Amstel, because now that it used to finish right at the top of the Cowberg, the final climb, and they've changed the finish. I mean, they kind of keep changing the finish all the time. This year, they didn't come up the Cowberg right at the end of the race. They kind of came onto the top of it, but without coming onto the climb and into the last K and a half. And it's since they've added that K and a half in the last decade or so, it's really changed the race. I mean, before, if you were the strongest rider on the final climb, you won Amstel, which Philippe Gilbert did 4 times. He was riding his last edition of Amstel today. And I saw in the press this morning, he was complaining again about the fact that they've moved or saying that if they kept the line at the top of the Cowberg, he'd have won 2 or 3 more editions of Amstel. But
would he have done? He wasn't anywhere close today. I mean, he wasn't talking about today.
He wasn't talking about today. No, I think in recent, kind of more recent years. But it has changed the race, and of course, I mean, we'll get onto the women's race a little bit later. But we saw that again today, where the strongest rider on the Cowberg didn't actually end up winning the race. So it's kind of changed the whole dynamic of it and made it a much more interesting finish, I think.
So let's talk about shock finishes. Amstel Gold Race, Pete, seems to throw them up all the time. What is it about the race that makes them just so exciting, so unpredictable?
They changed the finish a few years back now, where it used to finish at the top of the Cowberg. It wasn't the final climb today. It was in the ladies' race, but not in the men's. But they used to finish right at the top of the Cowberg, and so it basically meant if you were a really strong puncher, like Philippe Gilbert, who won it 4 times, you just had to create the difference on that climb, and that was it. You kind of got to the top of the hill, you won. Then they extended it 1.5 kilometres down the road, and of course that then meant that riders like Gilbert, who maybe got a gap, then had to hold off however many riders that were chasing them down. So it made it much more unpredictable. It kind of brought more riders into the equation, I guess. Like I think we saw that today. That I mean, we saw everybody was waiting for Van der Poel to do something. Van der Poel clearly wasn't in the shape to do anything. That benefited Kwiatkowski and Cosnefroy. But I mean, it's just that extra kilometre and a half on the flat that makes a difference at that race now, I think.
And what makes it super exciting. And talking about Ineos, because Kwiatkowski was there, we've already said that we thought that Tom Pidcock, after what has been a real roller coaster month or so for him, he's been up and down fitness-wise. I think he's talked about having sleepless nights this week as well, which, being somebody who works nights and has 2 young kids, believe me, I'm in no shape anymore. But Jeremy, it looks like Ineos, the Grenadiers, it looks like they're starting to boss races again, which I've not seen.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? There's been a shift. There's been a pendulum swing in the last few days. I think in the last week, in fact, has been quite pivotal because we saw Pogačar. He didn't show any physical vulnerability, but I think he showed a bit of mental fragility at Flanders. Everybody's now seen that bit of footage of him swearing at Dylan van Baarle after the sprint in the Tour of Flanders. And it feels like the kind of perfect image of him as this kind of unstoppable power slightly was tainted by that, and maybe that he is more mentally fragile than we think because he's still so young. And then Pete will testify this because he was at the Tour of the Basque Country briefly. We saw Primož Roglič looking a little bit short of his climbing legs in the Tour of the Basque Country, which is widely considered to be one of the hardest week-long stage races. And against that backdrop, we've seen Ineos suddenly kick into life with Zani Martinez, who's clearly, I think, their in-form rider at the moment for stage racing, winning the Tour of the Basque Country and showing La Grinta the kind of, the real grit, and also just kind of looking like he's capable of leading a team. And we've seen this win today with Kwiatkowski. So suddenly they're back.
And it's amazing how just a couple of wins or a few showings of strength can change your whole perception of what a team can do as we start heading towards the Grand Tours. I mean, with the Tour of the Basque Country, the Etzulia, would you say then, Pete, Dani Martinez, with what he showed there, is he going to be their main rider?
He actually said after the Basque Country finish that he didn't see himself as a leader. I mean,
really?
He just said...
But he seemed so secure. He was so on it.
He said, "I'll do whatever the team asked me to do."
Oh, okay.
But they've got options really, and it was interesting. I mean, I don't want to go too far into what went on at the Basque Country. Maybe we'll come back to that later. But it was interesting that Ineos had options in the Basque Country, and also Jumbo showed that they've got options because Jonas Vingegaard was in really good form. And he just kind of got an idea of maybe how those two teams are going to go into the Tour, that they're going to perhaps not go in with one clear leader. They're going to go in and try and fire riders off down the road at key points and try and unsettle Pogačar. It's obviously going to be, for UAE, he's going to be their sole leader. Maybe that's the way to get to him. I don't know.
Yeah, but I think this is the problem with Ineos, isn't it? Is that they'll say, "Oh, we'll go in with 3 leaders," and actually maybe they should put the house on 1 leader. And I think they worked more successfully as a team when it was clear who the leader was. When Froome was the out and out leader, and everybody knew he was the main man, and that was they had a lot more success for a more consistent period of time. They've tried doing the triumvirate or the, I don't know, what do you call a triumvirate when it's actually 4 leaders?
A quantum, maybe.
A quantum of solace. They tried that last year and it didn't work. And, I think that Martinez, he needs to be careful as well. There are these windows in riders' careers. We've all seen that all the years Pete and I have been watching bike races. There are windows of opportunity and they don't always come around again, and they have to maximize them because, who knows what's going to happen to Martinez. He might have a crash. He might have an illness. He might change teams, etc., etc. So, if he's in a position where he can lead them into Grand Tours now, I think, all power to him.
I think it's interesting what you're saying, Jeremy. I think the problem for Ineos is you talk about, yes, they threw themselves behind whoever was the strongest ride. They did it brilliantly with Froome over the years, and they have done with other riders as well. The difference is they don't have the strongest rider in the peloton anymore. So they've got to come up with different ways of racing.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, it's interesting that we're kind of saying that they've not really been firing all that well. I was speaking to a member of the backroom staff earlier this week, and they were saying that they've actually, I think well, this has been one of their better seasons in terms of the early season. That was today's winner, Amstel, or Sunday's winner, Amstel, was the 16th of the season. I mean, in the last, what have we got? They won a stage at Catalunya with Richard Carapaz, obviously shook the race up there. They won 2 stages at the Basque Country. Dani Martinez and Carlos Rodriguez is a phenomenal young climber. And then Martinez won the overall. And Kwiatkowski's won today. I mean, they're having a pretty good season. I mean, I think this thing of they're not the overwhelming power that they once were. That's true because Pogačar is. But otherwise, they're still an extremely strong team, I think.
Who is dictating how they race at the moment? I mean, because I know Sir Dave Brailsford has got this new role within Ineos. It's Ineos Sports, isn't he? So he's over the cycling, he's over all the other projects they do with the sailing and things like that. So who is dictating how they race?
Well, it's Rod Ellingworth who's now kind of got overall responsibility for the management of the cycling team. So he would be the prime mover. With an overarching view on, who goes where, I guess, and a final say on who goes where and what races they compete in according to their strengths and stuff. I mean, I'd slightly dispute with Pete that I mean, they are not a podium team. This is the thing that this conversation I had with Dave Brailsford at the end of last year's tour was, he was saying, well, we've got podium finishes in all these races and that since Froome left, we've done, we won the Giro, and we've got podiums in the Tour de France, podiums in the Vuelta, etc., etc. But that's not their place in cycling. Their place in cycling is winning these races. So I just think that they've gone through a really difficult phase where they had a lot of things going on off the bike as well, not just kind of the changes in personnel, but obviously the whole thing with Nico Portal dying and the loss that represented for them, which was absolutely immense. And then the Freeman investigation, which was another distraction that nobody wanted, etc., etc., etc. So there's been a few things that have kind of sidetracked them, I think. And you can't underestimate the effect that has on the people managing the team, as well as the people who are on the bikes racing. It feels like they've exited that now and they've gone through the transition. They've shed the dead wood or whatever that they had. I mean, there's still a couple of people there who you'd say in the twilight of their years, but there's definitely young riders coming through, as you've just said, Pete. And I just think Martinez is a terrific talent, and we've seen him in the hardest of races. That's that stage in the Tour that he won in the Massif Central. Was it Puy-Mary?
You're right, Puy-Mary, yeah.
Or Pass Pechol.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you see his qualities and his ambition as well, and his drive. And even when he was helping Egan Bernal in the Giro, and that iconic picture of him, turning around and clenching his fist and saying, "Come on!" I mean, the guys absolutely got it, and I'd just be ashamed to see him as a support rider, because I think if anybody can take it to there aren't many people who can take it to Pogačar. He may just be one of them.
Well, let's hope so. He's young and he's dynamic and he's got a great goatee. And do you think, just to wind it back into the Amstel Gold Race then, do you think seeing Michal Kwiatkowski back into that sort of form where he won the World Championships, where he's winning one-day stage races, where he's starting to look dominant again? Because I thought it was telling that there was a little nod between them at the Amstel. It was however many kilometres out before he went for it. It was just after they came over the Cauberg, I think. There was a little nod. And Pidcock said go, and he didn't really attack. It wasn't a full-throated attack. He just went off and he held it. And we've seen what happened at the end. We now realise he was if anything, the smarter of the two riders, because he made the Cherbourg cheetah lead him out. Whether he almost lost it or not is another thing. So do you think, with that, Peter, with that in mind, do you think that we should look now on Ineos as a true Grand Tour team again, that they will be taking Grand Tour titles this year?
I think so. Yeah, I mean they've had an exceptional week. I mean they rode extremely well at the Tour of the Basque Country, and they completely dominated the Amstel Gold Race for the last 50k today. I mean, we saw again. We were talking about it earlier. Ben Turner, the young lad they brought through, he was on the front for 20k at the key points of that race, kind of slimmed down the group. Then Kwiatkowski made his push, his initial push, with about 35k to go. And that formed the winning group of 11, and they played their cards exactly right, and they did that at the Tour of the Basque Country as well. And you just think they're going to take that momentum and they're going to use it. They're going to work with it.
Now, Sunday also saw the women's Amstel Gold Race with a similarly exciting finale, but one that was eventually dominated by an Italian rider, that is Marta Cavalli of FDJ, who took a solo win after attacking on the Cowberg to open a decisive lead. Was she cold, Jeremy? Because everyone else was in shorts and short sleeves, and she was in full winter garb.
It's funny, this, isn't it? Because you don't want to make a thing of it, because it sounds like you're slightly distracted by that rather than the quality of her win. But it was odd to see somebody in long sleeves and leg warmers winning such a big race. I mean, I found that quite odd. But she did say she'd been cold in the past in that race, and she'd locked up. Her legs had locked up because of that. So maybe. I mean, obviously, it was a very smart move because she won the race and she wasn't cold. So But I can't think. I mean, I've seen riders win in Roubaix bib shorts. Which are those shorts that go over the knee and then stop halfway down the shin. I've got a pair of those.
The 3/4. I'm so not a fan of that. Make a decision.
I know they're very good. They're very good. I would vouch for those, and I think they have a classic look to them as well. I think Franz Masson, who was probably around before you were born, OJ, he used to favour those as well, especially in the spring.
We're talking about leg warmers now, when we should be talking about what was an amazing attack, and she opened that lead up, and you saw everyone just take a little moment, and that's all she needed.
Yeah.
She judged it really well. I mean, with the women's race, they did finish going up the Cowberg, and Annemiek van Vleuten, I mean, she just drilled it on the front pretty much all the way up. And then they got to this moment where Van Vleuten had kind of given all she had and hadn't kind of slimmed the group down enough to go away on her own. And Cavalli just chose that moment to jump away just as they were about to crest the top of the climb, in perfect place to attack. And for a moment, Ashley Moolman-Passio started to chase after her. She kind of flicked at the elbow for the next person to come through. Unfortunately for her, it was Van Vleuten who had nothing left to give, and that was it. The race was done then. I mean, it was brilliantly judged and great for the FDJ team, because their two leaders were actually missing from the race today. So they kind of gave the domestiques a bit of a chance. Not saying that Cavalli's necessarily a domestique, but she probably would have been riding for Cecily Uttrup Ludwig normally, or for forget the other, for Brodie Chapman. That's her other. Sorry, I forgot her name. For their other leader, and she took a chance. They gave it to her, and she made the most of it, and it was a fantastic win.
It was another great race. Disappointing outcome for Demi Vollering when she took second step on the podium for the second year running, Jeremy.
Yeah, and I think it shows her qualities in that she has been so close on two occasions. But I think it also shows her qualities in terms of the women's Tour de France as well. There's no doubt that she will be a contender for that, and I think with such a strong team, SD Works is so strong. They're firing on all cylinders. They always have riders in at the death. They always have more than one rider as well. Well, very usually they have more than one rider, so they'll have options. And I think it's a shame for her, because you would have thought that kind of almost a mistake missing that break. But then I think there was a big group coming up the Cowberg the last time. They were all looking at each other, and she slipped away, and then it was too late.
It does go to show you, though, after another great Amstel Gold Race in both the men's and the women's, it is one of those great races that connects the cobbles to the later April races. I mean, I know obviously Paris-Roubaix is happening later this year in April, but it does connect the season together, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. It was interesting today that, I mean, as Jeremy mentioned, I was at the Tour of the Basque Country for 3 or 4 days earlier this week, and normally the riders who were kind of contending there, the likes of Julien Alaphilippe, maybe even Danny Martinez. I don't know whether Ineos had to change their selection for the race at all. They might have brought 1 or 2 riders in who were in the Basque Country, but there would have been riders in the Basque Country who would have contended for that race. I mean, Alaphilippe would have been the most obvious one. Maybe even Remco Evenepoel might have been there as well. But because of this switch, they decided to stick with the Basque Country. And maybe that kind of opened the door a little bit for Ineos and for Kwiatkowski. They took advantage of that. But I mean, it was a great race and a fabulous win. And I mean, I'd have to say that the Basque Country was a great race as well. I mean, I enjoyed my 3 days there. It's always a really unique experience. Fantastic fans. I mean, I don't know whether people were watching, but the last 2 or 3 days when they were going up the climbs around Eibar were just absolutely phenomenal in terms of the numbers of people on the road. And just brilliant to watch.
Did you have a calimocho while you were in the Basque Country?
A what?
A calimocho. Now, this is something that I drank when I was in San Sebastian years and years ago, and I've carried on drinking it to this day, and people look horrified when I do it. I want you to imagine a glass of red wine with some ice in it, with Coke poured on top.
That sounds disgraceful.
Well, you see, it does. It sounds disgusting, but it really is. It's like a midnight version of a white wine spritzer. Jeremy's into it, aren't you?
That sounds like a drink for the Cherbourg cheetah to me.
Well, talking of drinks, actually, we know that there are some great prizes in cycling that people have won over the years. I must admit, I thought it was a doctored photo because, we saw Marta Cavalli drinking one. We saw who won the men's one? Kwiatkowski win it as well. These massive pints of Amstel, which it must be 6 or 7 pints in a glass. That's a real thing, apparently, Jeremy.
Yeah, no, I thought it was funny because they got those things as part of the presentation. So they got those huge kind of enormous pint pots that were half their body size, in Marta Cavalli size, most of her body size, and she struggled to lift it up almost at one point. But and then they got just a half a lager, and they all downed that. The men all downed theirs, really, really quickly. Well, actually, Thies Benoot didn't. Thies Benoot looked slightly kind of wary of it, but Kwiatkowski and Cosnefroy down theirs in one. But yeah, it was. I actually drank some Amstel last night, and I felt a bit muzzy this morning. So I was thinking, if you drank that whole flagon thing, whatever it was, the barrel of the I don't know, what would you call it? A vat. It was bigger than a vat, even, wasn't it? Anyway, if you drank that, you'd probably
a Methalusa.
A Methalusa. Yeah, you'd probably. If you drank that, you'd have to be rushed to A&E. So, strong stuff.
So go on then. What are the best prizes in cycling? If we had a Methalusa of lager today, what are your favourite prizes in cycling? Because there's been some iconic ones over the year. Personally, I'm gonna go first by going for the Trident, the Tirreno Adriatico Trident. I love that. Everyone looks like they rule the sea. They get it. It's brilliant. It's a great, great prize. What's your favourite one, Pete?
I like the donkey that they give away in Dwars door Vlaanderen. The kind of the child's one. It's quite a big donkey actually, but like a child's toy. I think that's rather nice. And also the oversized beret that they give out at the end of the Tour of the Basque Country, the Chalapa.
And don't they give you a pig if you win the Trobro Leon?
An actual pig, a live pig?
They do give you a pig, yeah.
How are you supposed to how do you get that home? How do you put that in the overhead lockers?
Well, the pig's really upset because it only lives with each family for a year and then has to move on. Unless it's a different pig, of course. Maybe it's a different pig.
Did you see, there was, if we're talking about prizes from races, did you see what Ellen van Dijk won at the Blue Zone Friesland? And I think that's the pronunciation of it. The Blue Zone. Did you see what she won from that?
There's the sex aids.
It was, yeah. Easy Toys was the sponsor, so she won a selection box of goodies, and I looked it up: a vibrator, some play socks, a blindfold, some Kama Sutra playing cards, and a bottle of personal lubricant.
And what about the men? What did the men win?
I don't.
They went. I think there was a race where was it that race as well where one of the prizes was a vacuum cleaner, and there was lots of complaints about it that they're giving the ladies a vacuum cleaner, and then the men would then present her with a vacuum cleaner as well.
Yeah, and isn't that just the last one that I saw when I was looking this up? Isn't there a sword, a Toledo sword that you win on the Vuelta?
Maybe when the race goes there, it wouldn't be like a fixture. But I think the interesting thing about the Trident is also the symbol of Maserati cars. So Tirreno Adriatico and Maserati have missed a trick because I don't think Maserati sponsor the race. But the Trident that you get as the winner of Tirreno Adriatico is also the same as the Trident that is on the grill on the front of a Maserati. So, and Maserati, of course, invested in cycling in Britain because they sponsored the Tour de Yorkshire for a while and had a relationship with Yorkshire.
David Miller's personal sponsors for a while. So I remember seeing him when I was doing the Tour de France for the BBC, and we were all crammed into the back of a very tiny Citroen, which smelt of Rob Hales's underpants. Because do you know Rob Hales's 3 pants technique for going on Grand Tours?
No, we don't need to hear it again.
Well, I'm going to tell you anyway. You wear one pair's dirty, and one pair is drying on the front of the car because he hand washes them as he goes around. He goes with a tiny knapsack. But we were crammed into that, and David Miller and Ned Boulting had a driver and a Maserati to drive them around France. And then when it was the massive transfer between the south of France and Paris, they had a private jet.
I think I'm going to pull rank here because I was the first member of the media to have a Maserati in the Tour de France.
Oh, were you?
Because I was.
I seem to remember you getting that stuck on a speed hump in a car park somewhere.
Yes, that's right. And everybody laughed. Everybody laughed, including the team on not a speed bump. It was a ramp down to the press car park. I grounded it, and then I was and I was so anxious about it that I kind of had this panic attack, and everyone was like scoffing and laughing from the press buffet, watching me trying to get into this field. And ironically, the next year they all had Maseratis.
Well, because they saw you look so dynamic, stuck at the bottom of a ramp in a car park in your Maserati. Do you know what, Jeremy? Me and my publicly funded BBC Citroen, we'd have laughed at you and not helped as we went past. So, last orders have been called on the Amstel, and now everyone's attention turns to the Hell of the North, Paris-Roubaix, which for me, and I think a lot of people, is the greatest of all the spring classics of the monuments. Pete, now there's a lot of uncertainty in the build-up to this year's race. Post-pandemic, it's moved back to April after last year being in autumn. It was in October. Certainly in the men's race, some of the big names, Sagan, Van Aert, the mass ranks of Quick-Step, they're probably not going to be there. They're unlikely to be factors, really, of what's going on.
And of course, we've got defending champion Sonny Colbranny is not going to be there either.
Is he out as well? Oh, of course, because of what happened.
Yeah, so he's had his pacemaker fitted now, and he's not being. Well, the Italian Federation is saying that he can't race in Italy because riding with a device like that is not allowed. So they're kind of doubts over when and where he'll be able to race again. But anyway, turning to Roubaix, it's kind of it's open. Yeah, I mean, we don't know whether Van Aert will ride. It looks unlikely, but whether he'll, I mean, I don't know whether how. I guess the question is, we don't know how ill he's been in the last few days. Whether we know he's had COVID and how that affected him, we don't know. So maybe he can come back. But it looks an open race, and it looks like maybe we'll have another first-time winner. I mean, obviously Van der Poel's in good form. We saw the likes of Valentin Madouas was in really good form in Flanders.
What about Pogacar? Now, I think he's trolling everyone. After what happened to him in the last race when he came fourth in a two-man sprint, he went out and he looked at the cobbles and he took a picture of himself. I think he was at the Arenberg Trench. Is he likely to actually race?
Absolutely not. I wouldn't have thought so.
I mean, it would risk his whole season because if he had a crash where he was injured in any way, if he crashed and broke his collarbone, if he crashed and did anything worse, then, he could be out, broke his wrist even, he could be out for quite a long time. It would interfere with, and we're getting closer and closer towards the Grand Tours now. Obviously, his focus will shift towards the Grand Tours very, very shortly. And then once we reach May, and then, if he's nursing an injury, he'll lose so much of his build-up time that I think he plays with people, doesn't he? As you say, he's trolling everybody, but I think it is great that he does that. That he goes along and takes a picture of himself on the Arenberg. I think as well. At one point, he was just stood in the Arenberg, which is the most notorious stretch of the cobbles as well. But I think one of the things that's interesting about this year's Roubaix is the opportunity it presents for people who are nearly always also rans, and there's quite a lot of them. There's quite a crew of people who are kind of like, they've got the credentials, they've got the experience, but they don't get the breaks. I mean, and they're always kind of there or thereabouts. There's a gaggle of riders, really, aren't there, Pete, who are kind of like, they're always finished in the top 10 or the top 15, but they never quite get there and at the death. And with Quick-Step being so diminished this season, it feels they're really, really diminished in the classics and really struggling to find their mojo. I think there's a lot of opportunities there for riders who might normally not think they could win.
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually, the rider I'm most intrigued to see is Mads Pedersen, because he's been building up for this. I mean, I remember talking to him probably pretty much on the first day of Paris-Nice, or maybe even at one of the French races before that, maybe at Bessèges or somewhere. And he's basically built the whole first part of his season around Roubaix. Because of the 2-week gap, he said he was going to be a bit undercooked at Flanders, and he rode well at Flanders. He was strong. And he's ridden well through the classics. And I think Stuyven was there. Jesper Stuyven was their guy for San Remo. Maybe he was kind of their pick for Flanders as well. I just think Pedersen's time coming. This is a great opportunity for him to win. And especially, I mean, I don't know what the forecast is for next weekend. It's probably too early to say. But if it's wet and cold, Mads Pedersen's going to be right up there in that race.
Absolutely. And there'll be a different winner of the women's race as well after Lizzie Dinan, who won it last year with bloodied hands. I mean, it was such a dynamic, amazing win for her. It was a great first edition of Paris-Roubaix, which has been a long time coming and absolutely delivered. She won't be racing this year. She's pregnant with her second child.
Yeah, and I think the memory of her slipping and sliding in that lone attack last year is so strong. It was a monumental achievement, and it was so exciting as well to see that race, to see a women's Roubaix at last. So they've got a hard act to follow this year, haven't they?
We're going to preview the Queen of the Classics in greater detail in a forthcoming podcast, which will be available from all your favourite podcast places. So let's turn our attention to one more story. And it's one of the more surprising stories of the past few days regarding Biniam Girmay's future. Now, Gazzetta dello Sport, the Italian newspaper, has said this week that the Eritrean rider is being pursued by several big-hitting teams, including Ineos Grenadiers after his sensational breakthrough win at Ghent-Wevelgem. But Jeremy, you were pretty perplexed to hear this rumour.
I was just very surprised. Not really that I suppose big teams are after him. Maybe he's had a success in Intermarché because he's not at a big team and because he's getting opportunities and he's getting the opportunity to show what he can do rather than being an understudy to other big names, which would be the case at Ineos, Jumbo-Visma, UAE, wherever, maybe even the Quick-Step team, wherever else he went. The reason I was really surprised and kind of offended is too strong a word, but Ineos Grenadiers have been very unclear about their position on racism. And a few years ago, they had a rider called, until last year, they had a rider called Gianni Moscon on their books. And Gianni Moscon was involved in an incident with Kevin Reza, who's a French rider, a black French rider, a few years ago at the Tour of Romandie, where he racially abused him and subsequently admitted racially abusing him. And he was suspended by the team and also underwent a kind of diversity awareness course. However, the team then kept him on the payroll. They continued to pay him. They continued to excuse him both publicly and privately. I was in press conferences where he was kind of excused from this, and an apology was thought sufficient, and also private conversations with the team as well, where, you know, it became apparent that kind of it was a blip almost. And I think for, you know, the power of that moment when Biniam Girmay won Ghent-Wevelgem and the meaning, the not just the symbolism, the real tangible meaning of that moment, for him to then end up at Ineos Grenadiers when they supported a rider, they paid a rider who was a confessed racist. You know, they didn't get rid of that rider; they kept him on their books. So they compromised. For them to then sign Biniam Girmay seems, I don't know. I'm unhappy with it, and I'm sure a lot of other people would be unhappy with it as well. Have to stress at the moment it's only a rumor, and it was reported in La Gazzetta. Now, La Gazzetta is quite good with this stuff. The journalist who does that, Ciro Sconomilio, is very good as well, and very well connected. But it's not confirmed yet. So, you know.
Would it not be them, Jeremy, trying to set things right, to do things better?
That's a good point, and I think that's a valid point. I mean, I think they stuck with Gianni Moscon for quite a long time. I mean, Pete will remember this as well. You know, this incident happened. He was excused as being kind of naive and ignorant and young, but then they stuck with him for another 3 years. There were other incidents that weren't connected with racism, but that he never lost that shame or that moment. It always followed him around. And I just think that, you know, there's an opportunity for them to, as you say, right things, but I think that they almost need to apologise for what they did with Gianni Moscon. The team need to apologise, not just him, because they maintained his position in the World Tour. They maintained him on the staff. So for me, it's very odd to see this black rider making this incredible breakthrough that accelerates diversity, accelerates racial awareness, knocks over all the preconceptions. I mean, we talked about it at the time. It shatters all those stereotypes. It's a really, really powerful moment in the history of cycling. And for him to then go to a team where a racist was basically protected and enabled for 2 or 3 years, to me, is just wrong.
So there you have it. We're heading to the pub to drink an Amstel beer that's even bigger than Connor Dunn. In fact, even bigger than me. And believe me, I've trained really hard on the bike recently and seem to have put weight on. How? Well, every men and women's World Tour team is searching for the most accurate weather app on their phones prior to next weekend's date with the Cobbles. We'll be back with a preview of that big race, which I'm so excited about, a preview of Paris-Roubaix. Thank you to Peter Cossins, as always. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, OJ.
And thank you very much to Jeremy Whittle as well. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you, OJ.
I'm OJ Borg. We'll be back soon. Thanks for listening.
This has been a Big Ring production for Peloton magazine. Peloton is an award-winning print and digital magazine available worldwide, known for quality, design, long-form storytelling and historical features. In the past 11 years, Peloton has become the go-to cycling magazine for serious cycling fans and enthusiasts around the globe. Please visit pelotonmagazine.com to learn more about our membership options.
And it also smells great when you open it. Give it a sniff. Smells wonderful.